Wahi, chapter 33, The Weird Story. He then said, here's a story you had not heard before. And once upon a time, there was a fierce warrior named Sango, and Sango had the bad habit of fighting all the time. And it's one of his favorite pastimes, aside from dancing and women. And one day he tried to take on an army of 1,000. All was going well, but he fell from his high horse. And Rodinone and Aprovana, he paused to build up suspense, and then Winfield urged, so what happened next? Did he get beaten to a bloody pulp? Without his magical horse, El Chile, and he continued. And Lucrecia interrupted, wait, you never said the horse was magical. What was magical about the horse? Inquired Renfield. And he shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know, all I know is that the horse was magic. The precursor borrowers from the river and beating up the Spanish. I think that Chile was just a lucky horse. Do you know what kind of horse breed he was? Asked Lucrecia out of curiosity. I don't know. I think he was a white horse with short, straight black hair and strong, long legs, I think, said he furrowing his brow. That narrows it down. So one commented really, and another then said, so Sango fell from his horse. Then what happened? The people he was fighting were all mounted warriors, and without his lucky horse, even Sango was having a hard time, continued he. And the fan eventually dragged to the forest, and this gave Sango the chance to hide from his enemy. And he tried to call for his horse once, but El Chile was a mile away, and he was not too eager to die for a cause he did not believe in. And Sango would have tried to call for his horse again, but he heard that the enemy were approaching. And swallowing his pride, Sango hid, but his pursuers were restless, and he did not sleep or eat for days, and he covered himself with mud near the river to hide from his enemy. And he was able to make his way to his lover's house. And his lover was a witch named Yangsa, who lived as a good life in the forest, and they had recently started dating, so no one knew about her, and he knocked at her door, and she was surprised to see Sango beaten out to a bloody pulp, and he begged her for help. And he only needed some time to rest to finish the battle that he had started. Jan San tended to Sango's wounds, and while he rested in bed, she consulted her crystal orb. And she noticed that the enemies were drawing closer, and since it was so short notice, she had not prepared any offensive spells. Even with her magic, it was doubtful that they could both escape unscathed. And it was only a matter of hours until the enemy was around the place. And Lucrecia held her hands in prayer and said, did both of them die fighting like star-crossed lovers, or did Jan San poison her lover to spare him the agony of being slayed by his enemy? I chuckled and said, you underestimate Jan San's ingenuity. This out because Rudy rolling his eye. And man, now the table had finally been cleared, and a scented candle had been placed at the center to ward away the smell of food. And please be silent, said Kurt, and you people's constant interruption makes me lose the strain of the conversation at this rate that he will never finish his story. Now, Ahi, please continue. So Jansen awoke Sango, and she had him try on one of her dresses to disguise him as a woman, said Sango. And Sango then said, this will never work, and I can masquerade my face. And in response, Jansen cut her beautiful long hair to make a way for Sango. And when he was dressed like Jansen, she said, this disguise will help you get past your enemies unnoticed, and you must escape before the moon rises. And before parting, Sango gave his beloved a kiss, and said, I will never forget what you did for me. Hush, my pet, said Jansen, and if all goes according to plan, you will pay me back in tenfold. And I will pay you back in 1,000,000 for every lock of hair that you have given me, said Sango, embracing his woman before departing. Sango imitated the walk and mannerism of Yang Sang as he went along, and he eventually found a blockage of his enemy had placed around the vicinity, and he gave a slight bow for salutation, and his enemies did not notice him because the hair was covering his face. And Sango avoided speaking since his voice was still recognizable, and thanks to his disguise he was able to hide in the jungle and rest for a couple of more days. And he was even able to track down his magical horse El Chile. And when Sango felt confident in his strength, he mounted his magical horse and raided the enemy camp. And when the enemy saw him approach, they yelled, Jan San has turned into Sango. And while lost in bloodlust, Sango had forgotten that he was still dressed like a woman, and he attacked the enemy with his battle as imbued with his powers of lightning. And to add to the chaos, Jan San emerged from her forest wielding the magic and amulets and her machete, and she yelled at the top of her lungs, if Jan San finds, Sango will never be defeated. And she said this while she had her enemies limb from limb, and while Sango had been resting in the forest, Jan San had been preparing her spell components and her magical machete. and their combined still managed to crush their foe, and they took him out victorious in the end. And ever since the battle, Jansen has always been by Sango's war partner. At the end of the story, Kurt smiled and said, I remember the story. And Lucrecia asked, and you heard this story before. Did it happen for real or was it a novel? It happened, said Kurt sternly. The story was passed down from his children to his children's children and so forth. Let me guess, said Rudy, sneering. You are one of his many, many, many great-grandchildren. And Kurt laughed heartily, and it was the first time the guests had heard Kurt laughing, and he almost seemed approachable. And it wasn't until they noticed the large row of charred fangs, almost identical to those of Ahi, and Rudy commented, Kurt, you don't happen to be related to Ahi. Eleanor looked at Ahi and then to Kurt, and she said, Ahi doesn't look one thing like Kurt, and both just have really, really sharp teeth, and I mean, you must be pretty stupid to think that people who have identical teeth are related. A very astute observation, agreed Lucrecia. Because you gotta consider like elves and humans and dwarves and a bunch of other like magical creatures have teeth that like look identical, and that doesn't mean that they're related, you know. Kurt rose from the table and said, if you excuse me, I would like to peruse your garden and thank you for the fine meal. Rudy got up and said, yeah, I should be prepping up the horses, and you guys did say you wanted to visit Dokai, and I will send someone to fetch you when I'm done. Okay, I suppose it was a good time. I need to get to work, said Renfield, stretching, and Rudy made his way towards the stable, and Renfield went to his bedroom to peruse his contract forms, and only Lucrecia stepped behind, and when they were gone, she asked, Eleanor, how long have you been living here? A week or so, answered Eleanor. And what are the Grey like? Asked Lucrecia, looking serious. I don't really know much about them. They are a bit unnerving, a little too serious, and when they look at you, you feel like they are peering right into your soul. And now he says they can read your mind, and they have collected memories, so the second you arrive, they will know why you are there, said Eleanor, mimicking Lucrecia's serious tone. Their mind reading is only used for communication, interjected Tadioki, sitting beside Lucrecia. Most of them are mute, and over time the majority of the kind has lost their interest in reading thoughts, and people's train of thoughts rarely provides them any useful information. And thank you for explaining this to me, said Lucrecia, offering her hand, and Tadioki smiled and took her hand and kissed it. You are the first apeman I ever spoken to, said Lucrecia. We prefer the term nugget, said Tadioki, drawing his chair closer. And Lucrecia giggled coyly, and Eleanor asked, are you seeing anyone? Are you married? I'm on vacation, and no, I'm not married, nor am I seeing anyone, said Lucrecia. But you are so old. All women your age are married right now, commented Eleanor. She is right, and you're afraid of dying old and alone, asked Tadioki, feigning concern. How rude, said Lucrecia, trying hard to restrain herself, and then she got up and went to her bedroom to prepare for the trip to Dokai. Eleanor said nothing, and he too narrowed his eyes as he watched Lucrecia walk away, and when she was gone, Eleanor gave a deep sigh of relief. He gave Tadioki a sideways look, and then Tadioki said, I know, bossman. Eleanor breathed in a deep sigh before saying, teacher was right, my smart remarks are always so unwelcome. She's fine. Let's just go out for a walk, and it will clear your head, said he, taking her hand. Oh, but it's not like I got anything better to do, said Eleanor, getting up from her seat, and before leaving, he went to fetch his mask and hat. Eleanor waited outside with a blue parasol open, and when he was done getting dressed, he went with Eleanor, and the pair walked in the direction of Dokai, and they took the starry crossroads. And during the daytime, the starry road glistened in many colors, and most of the stars were golden, however some had red, violet, or blue color. And the road was surrounded by pine trees. Along the way, Eleanor would pick up a flower, and he removed his heart to serve as a flower basket for the maiden. And whenever she was not looking, he would pick a random flower, and he would eat it. And when Eleanor did notice, she would laugh and say, silly you, flowers and food, do you ever stop eating? You just have breakfast. I'm a growing boy, so I can't help it, said he apologetically. Eleanor shrugged her shoulders and said, I guess you're right. She stood before him very close, and she placed her hand to measure him, and his head could almost touch Eleanor's chin, and given enough time, he may grow to be taller than Eleanor, maybe. And when she measured him, she commented, you have gotten a little taller, and how old are you, he? He shrugged his shoulders and said, I am 13 years old, though officially I am 15. How can you have two different ages, inquired Eleanor, as she continued to walk. He shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't have an answer to give you. It's fun if you don't know. It is just that you helped organize my first birthday party, and I was thinking of doing the same thing for you, but if you don't know your birthday, and I had never seen you celebrate your birthday, so I don't know much. But I do know you love parties very much, said Eleanor, looking at a tiny parrot that had flown by, and by now the roads had passed through the forest and into the clearing of the meadow. The meadow was littered with laurels, lavenders, and daisy, and Eleanor diverted from the road and started picking up flowers. And he stretched out on the ground and started looking at the passing clouds, and a tiny red bird landed on his chest, and upon closer inspection we noticed that the bird was a common rose finch, and afterward 5 little birds landed on him, and the 2 were resting on his paws, and on his head there were two others that rested beside the rose finch, and Eleanor laughed when she saw how many birds were starting to land on him. And he sat up and the birds changed their position, and now a 6th bird rested on his shoulder, and Eleanor asked, "Why do they do that?" And he shrugged his shoulders and said, well, I got like this bird pressure, After having them for a few minutes, the birdies flew away, and then he got up from the ground and took Eleanor's hand, and he said, "Come and look at this with me." And Eleanor placed the flower she had picked inside the hat, and she waited for Eleanor to get up, and then he ran on ahead, and Eleanor followed giggling, and he took care not to run too fast to prevent Eleanor from falling behind. And they eventually made it to a building at the end of the prairie, and the building was surrounded by a small white fence, and on either side it had a small rose garden, and behind the garden there were 2 large oaks, and by the time of the day the trees had cast an enormous shadow over the structure. Alright, I'm done with that.